Okay, this is the reference, and this is what I see when I squint. And I've decided that I don't want to paint this gray wall, which I see on the reference. It looks pretty boring. So I've decided to combine the dark shapes all together and to work with the shapes, with the shadows towards cooler red side. Normally, I start with raw umber, but in this case, I've decided to go directly with the mixture I would like to see in the final painting. I'm using the biggest brush which I have in studio. Normally, I use this brush for grounds, but I thought it could be just funny to work with a big brush and with the other tools. So sometimes it's just nice to create such textures by scrubbing it in and scraping the paint off. This painting is more about experimentation than the result. So I feel myself really free here. I don't care about likeness. What I'm really focused on is how to make colors more interesting, more vibrant, and how to paint this portrait with a thicker paint. But so far you see it's more like adding and removing with both with brush and with a card and sometimes with other things. And for me, I don't know, for me the background looks already quite interesting, and you can see on the top right corner it is already dry. So it is also quite interesting effect of working very, very thinly in the beginning. So I continue to squint, and I just try to find the proper balance between the shadows and the lights, modeling very approximate shapes for now. But every time I deal with a 3/4 lighting or something similar, I'm really focused on making one side of the face, one side of the head lighter than other side of the head. I mean, in the lights. So the most important difference should be between the halftones in the light. The planes which are next to the core shadow should be darker than the opposite planes. It will create a really strong illusion of three-dimensionality of the head. And I highly recommend to focus on difference in the values of the lights, because it is very easy to find the difference between the shadows and the lights in the beginning, but the difference in the halftones and the light, it is more important for proper representation, or at least equally important. So here, as you can see on the palette, I mix a lot. So I load these brushes and I apply very thick layers of paint right away. And instead of choosing proper value and proper mixture, I go very free, and I try to amplify what I see, to make mixture lighter and more saturated, to push it in terms of color and temperature, and just to work with the paint on the canvas, on the panel, not on the palette. So the actual mixing is happening on the panel as well. And if I want to fix something, let's say I want to make value darker, or I want to change the design of the shape, I don't erase and I'm not scrape away the paint. I blend what already is there, and I try to work slightly more like a sculptor here, just shaping, moving, adding. And it is really essential to organize your brushes here, because you don't want to contaminate the big pile of paint which you have on the panel. So few brushes for the lights, few brushes for the darks, and be very careful. Do not mess them up. So as you can see, I tried to create complementary vibrancy here using some greens in the halftones, especially in transitional halftones, because I have some reds in the shadows, and I obviously have some reds in the lips, in the nose, in the cheekbones, some beautiful pinks, and I don't want to create monotonous, monochromatic painting. So the best way is to introduce some greens to create additional vibrancy and to see how I can change the temperatures, warm to cool, this type of. So we have warm shadow. The transitional halftone is going to be cool, kind of a green. After that, warm halftone in the light again, and the cool pink halftone, lightest halftone in the light. And finally, some yellow highlights or something. And you see the deepest darks, like occlusions or the background mixture, which I'm using now to create a silhouette of the head, is again cooler than the shadow. So it is cool, warm, cool color scheme, which can be really pleasing. So now you see that I still use the card to create nice brush marks, card marks probably. Because I like to have the skin smoothly rendered, especially in the lips, in the nose, around the eyes, but outwards from the focal point. It is very pleasing for my eye to see some kind of dynamic composition, some kind of chaotic representation. So I try to combine, in this sketch, I try to combine abstract and realistic approach. I want it to look fresh, like true Alla Prima painting. So this one had no second layer. Everything was done in the single sitting, just in one session, and I really like the outcome. So I constantly make decisions about maybe I should smooth things out. So I'm using fan brush or bigger brushes, or just a lot of brush work to blend it with the long filbers, which I use now on the video. And every time I want to introduce smaller plane changes, like subtle planes or smaller planes, I try to constantly change the temperature. So you can see some gray on top of the orange, or some pinks on top of the reds, of the blues, or vice versa. If there are a lot of yellow, there will go some blue. Or if it is too cool, I will just apply something warmer, like in the cheekbone there. As you can see on the palette, I clean the palette very often in this sketch, and this is important. Normally I don't do that, but here with a thicker paint application, I try to be in control. If you paint thinly and you do mistake, you can just paint over the area and fix the problem. But if the area is painted already thickly, yeah, it is going to be a trouble if you mess up the temperature, as I already said before. And as usual, I make the darks darker during the process. So I don't jump into the darkest darks right away. And I don't apply lightest lights neither. Although it is also yeah, it is absolutely possible to paint the way when you nail down the darks and the lights right away. But for me, I prefer to build the form gradually. So smoothing out transitions, and it is very easy to do if you have thick paint application. So more paint when it is wet, easier to make transitions smoother, or just to control gradation if you need to. And all these layers, all these different mixtures, now they're blending into each other, creating nice translucent effect of the skin, which I'm looking for. As usual, the highlights in the eyes with the sharpest tool I have, with the tip of the palette knife. So technically, all important decisions were made in the very beginning. It is a placement of the head on the canvas, on the panel, decision of the combining the value and the color of the background, and now just separating two darks, using darker and cooler dark for the shadows, and the rest is just building up and rendering. And also quite important thing here is the difference in halftones. You can see it clearly now. The right part of the face, right for us, is clearly lighter than the left part, which is also part of the light family of values. So now clean the palette again. I don't know how many times already, 3 times in 3 hours, in less than 3 hours. Clean, and also using clean brushes. In the beginning, I was using mostly ivories because they can be loaded very, very heavily. We can load a lot of pigment into ivory, and now I use long filberts, kind of synthetic mongoose brushes for delicate brushwork, for precision in the brush marks, and for smoothing out. Yeah, like that. You see, so if you did mistake, you can just carefully blend the problem brush mark into existing layer of wet paint. And when it comes to colors, the most important is to maintain warm and cool relationships between the different mixtures and different values. I believe it is more important than trying to copy the colors which you see on the photo. When you paint from life, it can be okay to copy the colors, but photograph is not the best source of the color. So now with the background, with the composition, you see I have red and green just for the sake of variety. Yeah, now it's time for the highlight, and you can see now on the forehead I have lightest light, which is yellow on top of the pink. So I like to do such complex highlights because they gradually build the value towards a very small spot, which is technically just a reflection of the light source. But if you keep the temperatures on opposite sides of the wheel, it will create additional vibrancy in the highlight. Quite opposite to chalky effect, which you can see many times when you just use a lot of titanium white in the lights. And I use this lightest light only in that part of the head, because every time when the light source is situated above, and we can clearly see it by just looking at the shadows, especially the cast shadow under the nose. So every time the light is not frontal, there should be just one side of the face. In this case, it's a right right side of the forehead, which has the actual lightest light. So everything down below, especially the chin, way darker. This is absolutely important. Just applying few lights in the cheekbone and the chin will ruin the illusion of the head, the proper three-dimensional illusion. So keep your eye on your value hierarchy all the time, in the beginning, in the middle of the process, and especially in the end, because these decisions, they're, yes, like you're going to sign it, and if it is Alla Prima, it is going to be the end. So just modeling, applying more highlights, some purples for the hair. I deliberately ignored the piercing in her nose because for Alla Prima, for just one sitting session, it is better to sacrifice such things and to concentrate on the skin tones and on the proper head representation. You can always add some such things later. Because if you want to be successful in Alla Prima, as I've learned by myself, you have to be very strategic with your time. So when I paint from life, I constantly look at my watches and I create some kind of a plan and a schedule. So I break 3 hours into certain segments, blocking the values, approximate colors for the light, and final rendering. So this is pretty much it. I hope you liked it. There is a longer version which is edited and clean, so I highly recommend to watch it. If you have any questions, just send me a message or on Discord or through Patreon. And see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.